Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. The FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report is sponsored by Advanced Compliance Solutions, your one-stop shop for all things FCPA compliance related. Today I have with me my good friend and colleague Michael Volkov, and we talk about the VimpelCom FCPA compliance settlement. The settlement was announced last week, and it's got a lot of lessons learned for the compliance practitioners. So Mike and I take a look at some of our first impressions from the settlement documents, and hope you enjoy it. The episode comes in just over 20 minutes. Thank you very much for listening. Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox, and welcome to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. Today I am at the SCCE Energy and Utilities Conference and was able to sit down with my good friend and colleague Mike Volkov. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. It's always good to be in Houston. Love Houston.
The big news, of course, in the FCPA world is the VimpelCom FCPA resolution from last week. A ton and a half of stuff to talk about, but wanted to sit down with Mike. We both have written about this and we've both been thinking about it. It's a lot of settlement and resolution documents to digest, but Mike, I wanted to see if maybe we could talk about some of our initial impressions.
Well, first off, to all those naysayers about the death of the Department of Justice and FCPA enforcement, I think this reminds us that anybody who criticizes the department as sort of being down on the job, what a way to sort of re-enter the market and the enforcement landscape. I think, Tom, this is, of course, a top 10 case, but I think that because of its focus on discrete set of conduct and the processes by which it was handled within the company, that I think compliance practitioners are going to have a lot to write about and a lot to focus on. You cannot just take this and say this was a systemic situation like Siemens or like Daimler, where it was within the fabric. Here, there are discrete incidents where the culture was made evident. And I think it's a fascinating case for that reason. And I think it sets out a lot of sort of best practices and issues that we all got to rethink as to how we're handling them and whether we're documenting things in the right way and how to avoid some of the pitfalls even when you do document, because I think that was evident in this case.
And I guess kind of picking up on your first observation, it shows the meaningless of measuring the DOJ's results by the metric of a 12-month calendar, because if this had been 6 weeks earlier, we would have been celebrating 2015 as a great DOJ year. But nevertheless, because the conduct was so nefarious and the conduct was so egregious, initially I was struggling with how can we use this as a teaching tool going forward, but you absolutely hit it on the head. Every one of these corrupt schemes, and there were multiple corrupt schemes, can be used as a teaching point for compliance practitioners, for internal auditors, for senior management, for board of directors as to what their role is in a best practice and compliance program and how they can exercise oversight in that program going forward.
One of the things you and I often talk and write about is that in many of these corruption schemes and ones that are this significant, you can always go back to the board and say, what did the board do? What did they know? And I hate to use the old Watergate phrase.
I love it.
Yeah, what did they know? Yeah, when did they know it? Yeah, Howard Baker.
What did the president know and when did he know it?
Right. So now, to me, one of the most striking aspects of this was the board's performance.
Right.
Here it wasn't a typical situation where they didn't know about this. Nobody had flagged it nor brought it to them. But the initial acquisition of the two companies and throwing in the second company, which nobody had a reason for including, there was no business justification for it.
So let me just explain for our listeners. VimpelCom bought two companies in Uzbekistan to enter into the market. The first one was Unitel, which I think was a $200 million purchase. And then there was another company, which is acronym Butzel. Butzel was bought for, I think, $60 million. but it was much significant. It only had 2,500 customers at the time, and it was pretty clear you were about to explain why Butzel was part of the deal. So.
And Butzel was owned through a shell company. There was a significant indirect interest through a shell company in which we had our foreign official, which was the daughter of the Uzbeki president,
right,
and who's very notorious in terms of corruption. And so there were questions raised as to the knowledge, who is the shell company, who are the beneficial owners, can we go forward with this transaction, does it raise FCPA issues? Those were raised first off at the finance committee level and then brought to the full board of directors. And what was absolutely incredible to me is that the push was, we've got to get this deal done. What do we have to do to make it sell, on its face, to make it plausible for us to go forward? So they hired an outside counsel and the board sort of took the position as described in the facts. If we have an opinion of counsel that says this is okay, we'll go forward with it. Meanwhile, the senior executives who were at sort of the heart of the misconduct failed to give outside counsel all of the information that was necessary, which to me is not really a legitimate explanation. It may be why the board of directors was not prosecuted or alleged to be engaged in criminal activity, but they weren't given all of the information. Nonetheless, an opinion of counsel from an international law firm, which we don't know which one it was, comes back and says the deal is okay, but what was clear at the discussion is that they did not know the beneficial owners, right, of Butzel or Butzel. So the question then is, how could anybody move forward? I mean, this is due diligence 101. How can you move forward on a transaction where you don't know who the beneficial owners were? You're worried it's a government official who's going to benefit. And particularly because there were terms under the agreement, I think, where there was a guaranteed buyback provision after a certain...
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Yeah. So, but in any event, the board goes forward with that, and then when the problem breaks, they throw up their hands and they say, we had an opinion of counsel letter. That's why we went forward with it. But and it may not be criminal, it may not be the requisite intent for criminal, but it certainly did not meet fiduciary duty obligations.
Right.
And so to me, the first question is, who owns this company? I'm not going to go forward with it. If I were a board member, I'd say I will not vote for this, and as a matter of fact, I'm very much opposed until we know the identity. And apparently there was some communication in which they were told it was sensitive. And to me that means
sure,
there's even more reason to know.
Right.
So I was struck by the poor performance of the board, and I think it's a reminder that the board needs to set a tone, which is, we're going to comply, we're not going to figure out reasons to go forward and where we can make plausible arguments of compliance. And I think it was a defensive type provision.
Well, I guess even more so than the observation or your point that the board has to set the tone, here we had the board's operational role in compliance, which they failed at. They are there for oversight for significant transactions, but at sometimes the board has to exercise control, and they had the opportunity to exercise control. They knew enough in 2005 to ask questions about the FCPA, and with the flimsy excuse of the information's too sensitive, coupled with the opinion of counsel, I think they perhaps not abrogated their role, but they certainly didn't fulfill it.
Absolutely, I agree completely.
So
that was the entry
right
into the market, right, of VimpelCom, and then there was, and as if that's not enough, right, then there were a series of discrete sort of transactions, right?
Right, and the fraudulent stock transactions, what I've called it, but essentially the foreign shell corporation owned by the foreign government official purchased an interest in Butzel for $20 million. and they were guaranteed, or excuse me, they had an option at their option to exercise in 3 years for a buyback of 57.5 or a 37.5 million profit, which would be exercised at their sole discretion, which the company did. So we had a bribe paid essentially through this mechanism of a fraudulent stock transfer or fraudulent exercise of an option. So that's going to be something that I think people need to think about. I would have not have thought in 2016 we'd be talking about such a blatant bribe, but here we are. Even after in 2005, the VimpelCom board knowing to ask the question, is this acceptable under the FCPA? But as you pointed out, it went beyond simply this initial start, because then they moved to the mechanism of utilizing an agent and utilizing a distributor to pay bribes. And here we found the board even being involved in the payments of an agent in Uzbekistan, where once again the board asked the question, who are we doing business with? And this brings us to what we have guffawed about this morning, the lawyer involved for VimpelCom, the in-house counsel, and his flailing away at comments about due diligence. So why don't you take it from there?
Well, the in-house counsel, as Tom and I just did a presentation, and I think I said the in-house counsel needs to go back to law school. What was interesting was that the in-house counsel articulated and wrote about the importance of documenting due diligence as a legal defense. And we all know that that is a strategy, but we don't write it down, nor do we operationalize the strategy by saying, here's our strategy. It means that you have to do real due diligence first. Right. And the lawyer here has convinced him or herself that they needed to just write down everything and provide a legal defense. But on its face, what's very clear from a due diligence practice here that everybody should, I think one of the important takeaways is you always have to know your beneficial owners of any entity you're dealing with. When you don't have them, you have to be concerned about what's your justification for moving forward. The reason there's an investigation that's very well known in this area, which is Cobalt, and the reason that they got in trouble was they couldn't find out the beneficial owners of a 37% interest, but nonetheless they relied upon various certifications that they obtained. But nonetheless, when it came out that the president of Sonangol had a 10% interest in this company, and it was a private equity fund actually, that they had to run in there and they almost got prosecuted by the SEC. So here what we're saying is all of these transactions involved money that ultimately went to this shell company, which in turn was owned and had indirect interests that were controlled by this foreign official, being the daughter of the president. So the lawyer here completely failed to carry out his or her obligation. I don't know what this lawyer's exposure is. I think that the department probably seriously looked at the lawyer for potentially criminal activity. I don't think it would be a criminal case, but nonetheless, this showed to me the danger of an in-house counsel that is beholden to the business, because it's clear the in-house counsel didn't have enough stature to say, wait a minute, we can't go forward with this.
You've spoken quite a bit on the use of opinion of counsel letters and their proper use as a tool in a compliance program. Here in the VimpelCom case, we saw really the misuse of the opinion of counsel letter. The only other deferred prosecution agreement I can think of where I've seen it misused in such a way was the BNP Paribas case, although that was in the money laundering area. But here, maybe you could explain what an opinion of counsel letter is, and if properly used, how it can be a tool in your overall strategy.
Well, one of the, and I do urge this as part of your mantra of document, document, document. I do think there are appropriate occasions for clients and companies to rely upon an advice of counsel letter. That letter is predicated on the lawyers having full access to all of the information that the company has in the sense about whatever issue it is, an FCPA compliance issue. And lawyers hedge their bets by always saying, this is based upon this information that was given to me. The value of this is document, document, document shows good faith attempts by a company to comply and not break the law. It's contrary to a criminal's behavior to document what you do and the reasons, and a good faith reason for why you do it. Then when you include an opinion of counsel letter on top, the company can say, we came to that conclusion, and then we relied upon our outside experts. And the outside experts gave us this opinion, and we applied it, and there may be conditions that they require of that, and we fulfilled those conditions, and we relied on it. To me, it's another great demonstration of good faith. I don't urge clients to use it all the time, but only in those cases where it's a close issue, and it gives them a level of comfort. In this case, the information that was given to the board, for example, and then ultimately to the outside counsel, did not include relevant data.
Right.
And you and I were talking, Tom, whether or not the letter said, based upon the information that was given to us, we bless this transaction. I don't know in good conscience how an outside counsel could look at this and without having a basic beneficial ownership lineup of every company, bless a transaction. Now, it may have been they were given false information about that or about who the owners were, or it may have been a nominee owner who was actually holding it for the foreign official, but it requires a little bit more due diligence. And I think in this case, this shows the dangers of relying upon an opinion of counsel, which is in fact wrong. That happened in PNB Paribas as well, and where they gave an opinion of counsel, which the government said was blatantly wrong on its face.
Right.
So you can rely upon this as long as it's a real good faith attempt. If it gets subverted for a wrong purpose, like in this case, to me it's more evidence of guilt, and then the company's going to pay a price for it. Not only paying the high lawyer's fees, right? They're also going to pay more in a fine.
Right.
So I think it's an instructive reminder about what you should do and what you shouldn't do when dealing with in-house counsel going back, but also dealing with outside counsel for opinion letters.
Mike, we took a little bit of a deep dive into the board's responsibility and opinion of counsel letters. Any other general observations that you've had on kind of your first pass at reading these multiple settlement documents?
I thought you raised a really good point, which was there are two other points. One is the money that was bribe payments were made through purported reseller companies.
Right.
And these were what you were talking about in terms of the third parties. And it was so clear the resellers weren't providing any service. They were actually just converting money to a proper currency and then giving it to the foreign official shell company.
What's a level of blatancy we don't normally see.
And you know, what is the first question we ask with a third party? Why are we using this third party, and what service are they providing for us?
Right.
So they failed at the first step there. The other instructive reminder was the subsequent, after this was late in the game, $32 million in consulting fees based upon a flimsy consulting report about the telecom industry in Uzbekistan.
Right.
Which it turns out was cut and paste from the internet and was a basic report. But what this demonstrated to me, and I think one of the other big points out of this, is internal controls. Who looked at the invoice?
Right.
Who approved the invoice? Who said, did we have any control to say, is this a legitimate service? $30 million for consulting? I wish I could charge that bill.
Ditto, said Tweedledum.
Yeah, so to me, that was an internal controls issue, and after working with clients where we dig through the details of their accounts payable portion, one last point I wanted to make was a lot of the conduct occurred here from 2011 to 2013. And in this age of hypersensitivity over anti-corruption issues, I was kind of shocked that a company so large, well traded on the sixth largest telecom company in the world,
Right.
and the absence of attention and resources to anti-corruption compliance. I mean, I get it in 2005, 2004, but 2011 to 2013 is kind of a shocker.
Right.
So those were sort of my thoughts on the case. It's a fascinating case, and there's a lot more detail to go through.
Well, Mike, always a pleasure. Mike Volkov is the head of the Volkov Law Group. And Mike, if someone wanted to get in touch with you about this case or any other matter, how would they do so?
You can call me anytime, 240-505-1992, or email me at mvolkov, V as in Victor, OLKOV, at Volkov Law, and you can always follow my blog, Corruption, Crime, and Compliance.
Mike, I don't think we're going to get you to move to Houston from San Diego, but it's certainly a pleasure when you do come to visit us in Houston.
My favorite city, great food, and Tom always knows the places to eat.
Thanks, Mike. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. If you're interested in the top FCPA Compliance Masterclass, I'm having my next Masterclass in New York City on March 7th and 8th. You can check out my website, Advanced Compliance Solutions, www.advancedcompliancesol.com for more information. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to visiting with you again.